What is up, everybody? Crazy here, and I'm coming at you with a video today to talk about the overall life of Predecessor, where it was when it first came out back in 2022 of December. You know, the patch cycle and the development cycle, how I was back then and why I was so angry with the development of the game back then, where I am now, talking about how much I'm enjoying playing the game and just the overall life cycle of where the game was, where it's transitioned to, and then where it is now as far as the overall development goes. And you know, there's been a lot of people that have been saying they're really scared that the augment patch is going to be really bad and meta is really terrible at balancing, and the game as a whole is just going to go downhill. But I promise you guys, it's not as bad as you think. And I know people for some reason think that because I'm not permanently angry at the game anymore like I was 2 years ago, that it's some sort of, you know, sellout by me because my stream's doing well. But in all honesty, it's just because the changes they have made. So we're going to get into the history of Predecessor and we're going to talk about all that. Let's jump right over to the video. All right, so let's get into talking about Predecessor and the history of Predecessor, and you know why I went from being somebody very upset with the development of Predecessor to somebody who's really excited about for the future. So in order to best showcase this, I'm going to go ahead and pull up the patch notes, and I want to showcase you guys something that's starting in 1.1 or 1.0 that's just changed drastically with the development of Pred. So if we look at 1.0, you can just see these patch notes are massive. And ever since 1.0, we have had very large patch, a very large patch, a very large patch, right? These patch notes are very big. 1.4 was another absolutely insanely big patch. Again, giving us an insane amount of notes, pages and pages of things to scroll through. And, you know, just excitement when it comes to the development of the game. Now, if we scroll down and we go down to earlier patches, not even just the earliest, but earlier, let's go to 0.9 here. Look, these were our patch notes, right? These are what we had to look forward to back when the game was first being developed. These are the things that we, as a community, were getting upset about. Look at these patch notes. New hero appears, and we're getting nothing in the patches. And this was patch after patch after patch after patch for about 2 years of development. It was just nothing, just this same game, just balanced from December 2022 until what felt like this 1.0 patch in August of 2024, right? So nearly 2 years of development of nothing but just tiny patches of almost nothing burgers. And even if you go back to the beginning, when they would promise things like custom matchmaking and some other things, they would make these big claims about what's going to come in these patches, and there would be almost nothing that gets released for a very long time, right? You can go back and check these out yourself. There's just nothing that's happening in a lot of these patches, and there's just no craziness, you know, that we're getting like we are today. And back then, a lot of people would be upset with the current state of Predecessor and where the development is going, but it's because the development wasn't going anywhere for that first year and a half. We weren't getting changes, we weren't getting augments, we weren't getting hero changes, map change. We were just getting balance every 6 weeks. Balance. 2 to 4 weeks, I believe, is what it originally started at. But balance and balance and balance and new hero, but then balance and balance. And we weren't getting anything of sustenance that really mattered. And a lot of the features that came out, like whenever they originally implemented new heroes and how to unlock them, it was this really terrible contract system that community just did not appreciate because it was just a horrible way to unlock heroes. And then the original release of the affinity system, not allowing Amber, it was only done through actual monetary, right? You had to pay $5 to unlock the affinity for a hero. You couldn't unlock that via Amber. So a lot of these patches, when they did actually have something, was still nothing. It was still just something that was half done or something that was done, you know, with very little it looked like effort at the time, and it was just getting very frustrating for the community over and over. And even, you know, those of you guys who watched my stream back then, when I did play Pred, I was getting very frustrated. For the first year of Pred, I barely touched the game, and I played Paragon the Overprime instead, because the game felt like it had those quality of life things to me, and Predecessor just wasn't implementing on any of that. They weren't giving us good skins, and they weren't giving us new features in the game, and they were just giving us balance and balance and balance. And they did have their reasons behind that, and they, you know, said they were working on console and developing that, and they just didn't have time to work on anything else. And that's where a lot of people's frustrations came from back then, is just feeling like nothing was happening and nothing was being developed when it came to the game as a whole. And I know people are frustrated with some of the balance that happens from time to time in the current game, but as we have gone through that cycle of a meta releasing Predecessor, nothing really happening for the first year and a half, 2 years, and to where we are now, you can slowly see the shift of them not listening to the community, them just doing what they think is correct as far as the entire gameplay, you know, what comes next in the iteration of the game, and not really taking our opinion on things, right? The contract system that kind of flopped and it was out of the game in no time. The affinity system and how it was released without being able to purchase it with Amber, not having, you know, things to spend Amber on in the game. The way they monetize the game as well, which has been adjusted multiple times. If you go back to the beginning and you take a look at those patch notes and you see how things have shifted to where we are now, you can clearly tell that a meta has taken a big change, right? They're constantly communicating with us, whether it be in Discord or on Reddit or on Twitter, showcasing new things. And this is a lot due to the hires that they've done with Carrie and Face Guy and Thunderbrush, and, you know, Blood Mortius, who's always talkative about the game and talking about where it's going and everything, along with RG Ace. And I think people are still feeling the effects, at least of you who played back in 2022 and early 2023, and even early 2024. I think some of us are really still feeling the effects of not getting anything, and we're, you know, taking that frustration and rage on where the game is going now. And if we take a look at the new patch notes, right, you know, 1.5, massive, you know, pretty large patch when it comes to gameplay changes and everything, right? Like, look at the scroll bar. Doesn't look like there's a lot here, but, you know, you're scrolling for a long time on changes that were done. And this was a small patch in the current day and age. 1.4 and 1.6 are going to be much, much bigger, right? 1.4, 1.0, all these patches were huge. And so the development of Predecessor has come a long way, and we're not getting these nothing patches anymore, constantly back to back to back to back to back for months and months and months on end. Actually getting sustenance. And although some of you think that they're, you know, maybe the balancing of some of these things aren't the greatest, I know that's a big fear with augments coming out. What you have to realize is MOBAs are an ever-evolving, ever-shifting meta, right? They're always constantly looking to improve on something or make their game stand out to everybody else, whether it be through depth or gameplay, you know, heroes, whatever it is, right? And Predecessor doesn't have a lot of that depth incorporated into the game just yet. It's a very simple MOBA still has a lot of work to be done. I'm not saying it's perfect by any means, but we are getting patches now that are adding to the game and giving us features that make the game unique and stand out in a crowd, and just allows people to have different play styles in the game. All these augments that are coming out, 3 different versions of them for the main primary augment. It's going to allow people to play a game in different ways, which always adds depth. And people are always scared of the word depth, but some of these augments are just fun. But they're not super OP or super interesting. They're just fun, and they can make for some really unique and creative plays, which is what we want in the game. We want the game to have these awesome moments where people come out and they do something cool, and you can clip it and share it and put it on YouTube and showcase to the world how cool and unique this game is, and where it can be. And as far as, you know, balance goes, they balance the game every 3 weeks. Sure, the augments, some of them will be OP for a little bit of time. Sure, you know, heroes from time to time get a little bit overtuned and overpowered. This happens in MOBAs, right? We go through ebbs and flows of, you know, this character's OP and now this character's OP, and this happens in Dota, this happens in League, it happens in Call of Duty with the guns that are strong and guns that are weak. It happens in BRs for the guns that are strong and weak, in Valorant and CS. This is just the ever-shifting meta of games that are like this, that constantly being updated, and balance and everything is always changing and adapting. And my main primary goal here was just to show like the history briefly of where Predecessor was and where it's heading to in the future, with these awesome, amazing updates that are coming out. You know, might be every 2 patches where we get a massive one like this instead of every 1, but even the one in between is always filled with stuff that is improving on the game and making the game better. And I think people are really taking that for granted. Again, to touch what I was talking about earlier, you know, some people might think that because my stream's doing well, I'm being a little bit of a sellout here, but that's not really the case. My biggest issue with Predecessor was always they just weren't giving us anything to, you know, make the game better. The game was just balance after balance after balance. We weren't getting ranked modes. We weren't getting, even though ranked still isn't 24/7, we weren't getting ranked. We weren't getting, you know, UI changes or map changes or big hero shifts or anything to make this game stand out. And we've been getting all of those, and they've adjusted the way that the skins are monetized in the game, and they've, you know, given us Amber. And I've spent maybe 600,000, 700,000 Amber in the game. I only have like 100,000 left, but I play the game nonstop. So for people who don't play the game nonstop as a streamer or content creator, you have a lot of things to spend Amber on, right? There's a free skin for every single hero that's purchasable by Amber. Sometimes they come out with, you know, different bundles that cost Amber. They have icons and profiles and banners that all from cost Amber, right? And so like they've been implementing on all of these things over time. And I think if people, you know, go back and they really take a step back and they look at the patches, where they were and where they are now, you can see that Omega has done a dramatic shift, especially with all these new hires that they've added to the game to just improve on the game as much as possible. And we're finally starting to get that player base increase instead of decrease, right? I believe the last time I had somebody, you know, check on it, it was, or somebody talked about it, maybe it was RGAce in my stream. He said it was over 50,000 unique players daily. So it might not have been RGAce, it might have been somebody from the API on a Meta City, I'm not sure, but it was about 50,000 unique players daily, which is massive improvement from where they were, right? Predecessor is going on the upward trend, and we want to keep improving on that. And again, augments are going to be scary for those of you who think that augments are just going to be wildly crazy and they're too complex and the game just isn't going to be fun for new players, and you know, there's going to be some overtuned stuff. And yeah, you know, all of these things are probably a little bit true, right? The game will get more complex for new players. There's more things to look at, and there will be some that are going to be overpowered or overtuned, sure, but it's going to add a dynamic to the game and a fun metric to the game that's going to allow some heroes like Chimera, who can't lane, to be able to be laned now, depending on the augment that you choose, or characters that maybe, you know, are a little bit more utility based. If they go a certain augment, maybe they can be more damage based, right? There's more utility that's going to be involved in the game, and more depth that's going to be in the game that's going to allow people to play different ways than they were able to before. That's just going to add a lot of uniqueness to the game that we want. Sure, can everything be improved upon? Yes, 100%. There's still a lot of things that a meta needs to add to the game that we all want, of course. I'm not saying the game is perfect by any means, but I don't want... I see all these videos coming out about how the meta is terrible and how the game is just being developed in a terrible direction. And I see comments on YouTube saying, you know, things are, you know, going in a bad direction with balance and everything. And, you know, MOBAs have metas. Sometimes the meta will be, you know, 45 minutes on average. I've been in a Dota 2 meta where it was about 40 minutes on average. Sometimes it'll be 18 minutes on average. I've been in another meta in Dota 2 where that was the average. It was about 18 to 22 minutes, right? Again, as I mentioned earlier, MOBAs go through ebbs and flows. And just because this current meta might be something that you don't enjoy, doesn't mean that the game as a whole is being developed in an incorrect direction, or that everything is doom and gloom and horrible and bad. Just balance of the game might not be your favorite at the current point in time, but who knows, the next big patch, it might go back to your, you know, more of a playstyle that suits you the best. And that's just, you know, it's just the nature of the beast when it comes to developing games like this. So I wanted to have a quick little discussion on it because I'm getting kind of tired of all these doom and gloom comments that I see. And I get kind of tired of seeing some of these videos that come out that are just always doom and gloom on, YouTube, or some of the comp scene talking about, hey, everything's going to shit and nothing's going to be, good in a year. But overall, take an overall look at where we were a couple years ago and where we are now, and the changes that are being implemented. I think you will see that we as a community are getting a lot more than we used to, and the meta is doing a lot more than they used to, as a whole, communication wise, patches wise, development wise. Everything has gotten way better than it was, and hopefully it continues that trend. And in the future, 1.6, 1.7, 1.8, which they've teased are going to be amazing patches. Hopefully we continue that trend of absolutely awesome, fun, unique things that get added to the game that pique a lot of people's interest and draw more players to the game, so we can get that unique player count up. But if anybody has any questions, leave a comment below, or come see me on my YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, TikTok streams, and just ask away. I don't think everything is perfect, but let's look at where we were and look at where we are now, and just think about everything that's been improved on. So I'll catch you next time. Make sure to like and subscribe. Bye.